Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us back at Stronger Roots. We have a reoccurring, not reoccurring. We have a guest that has been on our show before, and I want to welcome Shawn to our podcast today. And Shawn is an amazing woman, and we have had some really deep conversations in our last podcast. And she is doing coaching and all sorts of stuff on TikTok. I see her beautiful face on TikTok all the time, and just deeply humbled by the work that you're doing, Shawn. Um,
Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
That's
So
really
we
sweet.
we wanted to kind of talk. I know that, we all kind of have been going through life and struggles and all that kind of stuff. And um, I don't know if there's any kind of topic that you wanted to kind of focus on today. If we want to jump into like how everyone's doing and how we're, managing
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think it's been everybody. I feel like we've all just been going through a lot. I know it's
We
just been
sure
the
have.
last few weeks. It's well months for our stuff, but it's a lot. It's heavy and it takes up time. It takes up space. It keeps us from like really participating in our life. I think like
Hmm.
and moving forward. And then we were talking before we started recording about the therapies and the talk therapy. And I think you're right, Shawn, when you said sometimes talk therapy just isn't enough. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. Because, we can tell ourselves, and here I am a life coach, and I've been doing this for a while now. And we can tell ourselves over and over and over again, I'm not at fault. It is not my fault. I didn't deserve this. There was nothing that I did to cause this when we're talking about abuse or trauma or alien, but any kind of trauma, whatever it is. And we can say it over and over, but in our bodies, we're storing the trauma. And I'm trying to really teach my audience how to get that trauma out of their body. And I'm doing that by learning myself and then passing on what I'm learning as well. Because talking about it, we understand it cognitively. We understand it all day long. Why would I want to go back to someone that abused me? Or, I can't fix a situation right now. So why can't I just, let it be over here for a minute? Why do I have to obsess over it so much? And we all know that we deal with those things. And so what tools are there out there to help us try to recenter and try to stop the loop is really what I'm been focusing on for myself recently. And then I'll be passing that information on to my audience as I find out more and more.
So I am, I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to school to become a clinical counselor, and my specialty will be EMDR because I believe in it so much. I recently had a talk with another survivor of domestic violence, and she said, I've done like all the talk therapy. And I asked her, I said, how do you feel after the talk therapy? And she says, I feel more activated. I feel like it's like circulating in my body, and it's like it's there. And so what I really recommended for her, because we can talk all day long about something, right? We can logically say this happened because of this happened and this, but trauma shows up in our bodies, our bones, our fascia, our vagus nerve, all these things it holds on in the body. And the only way to really release that is through somatic healing, and body work and EMDR. So I always try to lean people towards going through those things. And I was going through a really hard time with the death of my best friend and another friend. They had passed away suddenly, and it was just years of really hard grief. And this was even before I was divorced. And I started seeing a trauma therapist, and she recommended EMDR. And of course, I didn't know anything about it. It was the most crazy kind of experience because we talked about I'll walk our listeners through kind of what EMDR is, but we talk about like the big T's and the small T's. And the big T's are like very traumatic things that have gone on in your life. The little T's are like small, little minor, traumas that you've had. And you kind of start from the bottom and you work your way up to the big T's. And it's a session that kind of takes you through a grounding practice. So the therapist will really talk to you about like finding your happy space. Like, where is your happy space? Like, is it on the beach, relaxing? Where do you go to when you need calmness? And so you'll spend a session or two kind of like really talking about that. And my trauma therapist had a light bar in her office, and also a paddle, like these two paddles that I held in my hands, that were vibrational. And so it was back and forth, back and forth. And it was a light. So we would bring up, like one of it was like the death of my friend. And then, my best friend. What feelings do I have about this situation? That, I felt helpless. I felt like so sad. My, heart was broken because of all of this. And so she would ask me, I want you to bring up that sensation, that feeling, and talk about it for just a second. And then she would start this light bar that would go back, and you would just keep your head still, but you watch it with your eyes. And so what it is, it's really actually it's exhausting,
Yep.
but it's remarkable of how it takes it from one side of the brain and shuffles it over to the next side of the brain, like the right side to the left side. And the way that um I feel about those situations now. I can talk about my friend. I can tell you, I can recite all the really great memories that I have of her. And it's like, it was a game changer for me. It was such a game changer because it was like when I would talk about her before, I always have had that like anxiety, anxious, feelings and depression and all that kind of stuff. And now it's like I can tell you something really positive about her, and the great times that we laughed, and look at her in a different way, and really
Right.
preserve her memory in such a positive light. Before, I was too activated. And I think that is actually what led me to, weirdly, my divorce. Is the elephant in the room was that I wasn't talking about this big space that was happening. And my therapist asked me, like, I see some things kind of going on. What do you, like, talking about, this or that? How are you feeling about this? And my reaction to that was very activated. And so she, was talking about EMDR, and we did this, and I was just, it was, it slowed me down, and it really cleared away some really major things. And what I would equate it to being is that you can talk about things without being so activated. And that's what you're feeling. Like, we hold the trauma in our body.
Yeah.
And it was a really profound, I mean, I'm searching now, like, all the time, like, where's a good EMDR therapist? I need to work through something. I need to work through this. And it's almost kind of like life changing. And
Yeah.
Beth, you've done EMDR too. So, I mean, I'm sure your experience is pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
I'd love to hear that. And I'd like to know too. I'm just now researching, and it was my understanding that it was one EMDR session per experience for the most part, but I guess that's not the case because I know that it depends on, I mean, it depends on how many, it's only one experience. And of course we have multiple traumas. So it's whatever the ones that you think are affecting you the most, but it could take, I'm not sure, multiple sessions to get through just that one
Oh, yeah.
particular trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, for mine, so my abuse, divorce, all of that stuff happened years ago, back in like 88. But I carried that with me for years. Um, and it just, you carry looking over your shoulder, the threats, even though, it just every everything good thing that happened, you were waiting for that bad thing to come in because that had always been a threat of taking the happiness. There was a lot. There was a lot. Um, and then over the time that kind of went on from like, I don't know, that ended with that situation when I was 21-ish, 22. So by the time I got into therapy, I was 35. So it was a long time. And I didn't, well, the therapist that have been doing the EMDR with now, I've been with her about 10 years, but that's where I did the EMDR. But through all of that, it was like Danielle said, you find your happy spot. Mine was on the beach, and it's all the sounds and the feelings of the breeze and this feeling of the sand, and they go all through that. So you can get really detailed into that. So for what happened with me, I had experienced migraines, really bad migraines from the time that happened up through, 10 years ago. I had really bad, just debilitating, where I would lay on the bathroom floor with my face on the tile, and it just, just sick, and just running kids. My husband was on second shift, and I can remember making that coffee so strong and filling that thing up to go to practice and all these things every day of the week, and just to get me through. And this one particular session, as we'd been going through, so my therapist didn't use the light, she just used her fingers. So just like this back and forth. And so this one particular session, we'd been really digging into some stuff. Some things had come out that I had totally forgot about, that didn't even realize that had happened. And in this one particular one, we were working on everything, and I had my eyes closed, and because mine, I wasn't talking, I was visualizing, bringing images up and talking, or like just thinking about it, open my eyes, and then she would do this and I would follow with her fingers. And all of a sudden, my migraines had always been on this side and up over my ear. All of a sudden, I heard a pop. I heard it. I don't know if it was real or not, but I heard a pop, and this entire side of my head got hot, like just like that. I've not had migraine since that day. I have a headache disorder from the last 3 or 4 years, but the migraines stopped.
Wow.
And I'm
what
like,
a story.
wow.
That's wow. And and so what, you don't have to share the exact memory, but, do you think it was tied to the exact memory that you were being treated for, in that session?
Yeah, I think so. I think so,
That
because
exact experience.
it
Yeah.
was a lot of the, the narcissistic, mental, all of that junk, but it was also a lot of, it was physical too. And that had been where, getting my head, shut, hitting the wall and stuff like that. So it was all like, it was holding up in here. It might right here, all the way up over here, and it snapped. It just like broke that day. And I didn't have a migraine after that. I was on medication. I had to keep it in my purse. As soon as I felt it, I had to take medication. It
Right.
knocked
And
me
so
out.
you did one EMDR session, and
No,
Danielle, you did
no,
multiple.
so the EMDR, the way it
Because
works
it's
is,
very expensive. I want to let the
yeah.
viewers know too, like what to expect, because I thought one session I was going to feel something, and I guess some people might, but for the most part, I believe on average, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle, I think it's like 4 to 6 sessions. And the price can be anywhere depending on how experienced the person is. I think, if you've got somebody that's like an intern or something, maybe you can find somebody to do it for like $175, but I think it's like typically $250 an hour and up. It's quite expensive, but if the insurance doesn't pay for it. So I just want the
My
viewers to know it's
insurance did pay for it
great.
because it was through
Okay.
therapy.
Yeah.
My
Good.
insurance, I was going through, I was already with this counselor,
Well, let
and
me correct that in. I shouldn't say insurance doesn't pay for it. I should say a lot of clinicians don't take insurance. So I apologize. So
true,
let
yeah.
me flip that around, because
Mine wasn't just part of my counseling. She just, I don't know how she built it, but
okay.
that
Okay,
mine was
good,
just
good,
part of
good.
my counseling. And then we went through that. So I went through that for several sessions. And then because I had some grief with losing my son, and there was a lot of stuff that was just piling up at that point.
So
Yeah.
one of the things I would say is that most therapists who do this don't typically take insurance, but sometimes you can find there are therapists that do specialize in EMDR that will take insurance. So it's kind of like hit or miss. Like some people are like, Yeah, like I went to, I think it was like Cincinnati Trauma Clinic. So after it was all paid through insurance, and then she ended up stopping insurance. So it was all private pay.
Hmm.
And I think the sessions were, 175 for an hour or something like that. But I was already kind of through that phase of like, the T trauma, the big T traumas that I wanted to work on at
Yeah.
that time. And it's funny, the release that I had, like one of them was, I had lost my cousin in a house fire right after my wedding. And I remember it feeling so kind of like, it had been like 20 something years then. And when I was talking to her, I started to get really fidgety and, anxious and all that. And she said, let's just like whatever's coming up, come up, picture, something in your head about the situation or something that's not setting right with you. And we started, and I started to just like sob. And then she said, let's go ahead again. Like, like from a scale from 1 to 10, what are you rating this at? And I was like, I feel like an 8. And she's like, okay, let's go again. And so the lights would go for like a minute. And then, I was holding these paddles, and then the score eventually got down to like 2 or 3. And so I wasn't so activated from that experience anymore.
Hmm.
And so it's very exhausting. It's like one of these, it's like an emotional release.
It's
It is
weird.
absolutely, I don't
It's
know,
very
like,
weird. Yeah.
yeah, the science behind it is wild. It's Shapiro. I forget the lady who invented this, but I know that she was walking one day, and she was, activated. She had gone through a really terrible like argument or situation, and she went for a walk, and she was kind of, her eyes were going back and forth. Like she was looking at this, and she noticed right away that there was a decrease in the way that she was feeling because of what she was doing with her eyes. And it's a reprocessing of how you're shifting your emotions from one side of your brain to the next. And
Let's dig into that a little bit because a lot of viewers may not understand. So it's I'm I always get this wrong.
eye movement
EMDR, eye movement,
desensitization.
EMD, desensitization reprocessing. I'll
Yes.
set that up. But really what happens if you go farther back with the trauma side of it. So when you experience a trauma, and it's one of those traumas, whether it's a loss or whatever happens, that trauma has affected you to the point that maybe in a couple of weeks you'll start to feel better and the intensity goes away and you can kind of move through it. But the
Mhm.
trauma part of that is if that doesn't happen and that stays with you and it becomes debilitating and anxious and things like that start coming up and it starts really affecting your quality of life, then that is a true trauma response at that point. And what happens when there's a trauma, part of our brain freezes at that point, whether it's at that age, at that moment. But the EMDR purpose is to, by moving your eyes back and forth like that, it forces your brain to reprocess or process that, like Daniel said, move it from one side to the other so it can go out. But it's forcing that to become unfrozen, and it's forcing your brain to then go through that so that it can process that memory and move that memory out.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why that it's, so our viewers can understand what it is. And we have a couple of pediatric EMDR therapists in Cincinnati area that are
Yeah.
really good. And my sons went to one of them for a little bit and it was very helpful. It was
Yeah.
very helpful.
The therapist that I went to, she explained it like a lion is running after a like small animal, like Giselle or whatever, gazelle, whatever, and on the Serengeti. And maybe they attack it, or maybe they attack like another one next to it. And what happens is that lion or tiger, grabs the animal, and the one that got away will stand there and kind of shake its body and it's getting out all that adrenaline, all that like stuff. And so we don't do that. As like people who go through trauma, you're going through a trauma and you're just like, oh my God, that's terrible, blah, 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 and all this stuff going on. But you never get it out of like the adrenaline lives in your bones, your body, the depression, the anxious feelings are stored in your body. So when you're talk therapy and you're saying all the things that are going on and it's reactivating, it's not, it just, I here's another thing I want to add is that some of these groups that you get into, support groups, it is, you talk about it and everybody goes around, shares their experience, and then you leave. And you think, well, that just ripped off the whole freaking scar. Like, what do I do with that? Like it's sitting there exposed again. And what good does that do? Not cutting down what counselors and therapists can do, because they do give you tactics on how to, look at the situation a little bit different or whatever. But most of the time when we're talking hardcore trauma, that is betrayal trauma, is trauma that is just stuff, hard stuff. Um, it just doesn't go away. And talking about it activates you. And that's why I'm a big believer, somatic healing, yoga, and also like EMDR. I would just say start there. Just go there.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to say, though, this is kind of a good web segue into what we wanted to talk about, how to calm our nervous systems. But
Uh-huh.
uh, I have looked into it, and I'm going to request that I start with stage 2 of EMDR, because it does bring up a lot of traumatic feelings. And if we don't have the tools to calm ourselves, it's very difficult. So I already have a heightened system from everything that I've been through. And so I just want to caution everybody that's listening. I hear a lot about people going into MDR, EMDR, and coming out, they feel like they were just a wreck and it didn't help them at all. They find out later that obviously they don't feel the intense emotions that they had before, but we don't want to come out of these sessions feeling like that. That's not the purpose. We are going to feel heightened anxiety, but if we don't, be a really bad time for some people until their systems reacclimate. And Danielle, you could probably speak more to that than I probably could. But
Yeah, I mean, I think with anything, you don't want to bring up like the trauma, right? It's better just to kind of stuff it down. Like if I talk about it, it makes it real. If I try to start to dive into it, then I've just opened up this can of worms, I've just opened Pandora's box and I've got a lot of feelings, and then you're dealing with all this stuff, and it's so hard. And so, like EMDR, when you start to go through that and you start talking about that, and the really interesting part is the EMDR therapist is not going to make you sit there and talk about it. It's like very brief, like, let's bring up this. Let me bring up, a car accident that you had. Let's bring that to the, forefront of your mind. And then you start to say, okay, yeah, I've got that pictured in my mind. I'm feeling how I feel. And then boom, they start this light or the finger or the paddles, whatever it is. So you're not diving into, tell me how you feel about that. What happened when you did this?
No,
It's
I
just
didn't even have
very,
to talk about the memory that I was bringing up. I
yeah,
just
no,
had to
it's
bring
very
up the memory
brief.
right.
myself.
Yeah,
But
you
I
really
think
don't. It's
it's,
really cool. But I'm kind of talking about after, when you get out of there, and you've brought the
Oh
memory up.
yeah.
So you're activated. What tools to kind of use to try to calm that activated system? I've heard a lot of people going in and being activated when we're in that activated state, it's really important to figure out how to
yeah.
deactivate us. And
So
so I'd like to work with some of those tools too for some of our viewers,
Yeah.
because those are so important.
yeah, and so when my son was going through this, one of the things that his therapist, she's pediatric EMDR therapist, and she said, he will continue to process.
Hmm.
over, over the next several days. He'll continue to process. And I've done this myself. So one of the things that each of our therapists had us do is to like just take a minute and then just hold your
Clarify.
hands like this, close your eyes, bring up the memory, and then just tap in
Yeah.
rhythm. And so that's something that you can, and it does help, but it's like just kind of do it in rhythm, not too fast, not too
Yeah.
slow, and just do it until you can kind of, and my therapist has actually done this with me on a telehealth, and I've done the tapping, and it
Hmm.
does help because I've even caught myself like being in a, like, I don't know, some other situation and start to feel it. You know what it feels like? You're like, oh boy, here it comes. And I've just like had my hands on my knees and just done that one right after another and just kind of, lightly tapped a little bit, and it does help. So I think that's a good tool to use. But it's important that our viewers know, once you start this, it's not going to end when you walk out of the office. You're going to continue to process this over a period of days, and there will be those feelings. And I think it's important, and a good EMD or therapist will tell you right from the start, listen, this is how it works. You're going to continue to process. They will bring you back to a good memory
Yeah.
before you leave the office, because that, to kind of get you where, let's bring it back together. Now let's think of that happy place, and and let's do some of that, whatever tapping lights or whatever they'll do, and then bring you back to a good place before they let you go home. But yeah, that throughout the week, and when you laid your head down at night, and that's just.
I was going to say my therapist was really good. She had me sit with a weighted blanket on my legs. And so that was like a real grounding kind of thing.
Mhm.
And like after I processed some stuff, I mean, I remember this one session, I just wailed. I cried so hard, and I cried and I cried and cried and cried. And I remember she got me back to like normal baseline kind of thing for me. I had gone in an anxious mess and came out kind of like just drained. You feel like, but over time, you still, like I said, you're processing the emotions of it, but they don't feel so intense.
Mhm.
And I think it's just a way of like how your brain is organizing it into like the other part of your brain. It's just a moment of like, and so when you bring up those moments again, like I can bring up all of those moments and not have that same reaction. Like it really truly works. When it works really good for people who are able to accept that modality, like, and really do well with it, and it's not for everyone. And if you're having an adverse reaction to it and you're like, this is just too much, I can't do it. I mean, it does happen. And so you really have to like listen to yourself, have some good support, and also know like, this is just not going to work for me. And then there's other modalities, like there's somatic healing, there's shaking it out. I am a big believer in like turning on some music and just like shake your body, move your body, move your hands, move your legs, move it, because you have to get that out of your bones. You just do. Or else what's going to happen is you are really going to live with like chronic inflammation, uh, sore body, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. All that stuff is, I think, a direct result of unresolved trauma that sits in our body. Dis-ease is all disease in your body. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And
yeah,
there's I'm sure you guys have heard the book, The Body Keeps the Score or
yeah,
something
yeah,
like that. Who is
yeah,
that by? I'll look it up real quick. Does anybody know off the top of the head?
yeah,
And it
but
really does. So many people come out of, as you know, these situations. I have so many women that have cancer, and
mhm.
they, breast cancer and uterine cancer and blood cancer. And I don't, who knows if it's real, it's got to be related to the stress of these things. It's so
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah, the
Yes.
body keeps the score is a kind of a staple in the psychology world, because it's like one of those things that the trauma that was done to you can be played out again in a normal, healthy relationship. So if, something was done to me in my relationship and I experienced something very similar to that, like parallel to, that situation, I'm going to automatically go into a heightened state. And even though this person is safe, my body remembers how I felt when I experienced it from this person. And so that's what it actually is. The body keeps the score of what's happened to you. If you're not dealing with what has
I
happened.
really hate that I just missed you saying all of that because I was looking for the book.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, it's what I mean is that like, you could be with a really healthy partner and say he comes over to like, you know, give you a big bear hug or whatever it is, and the way that he does it kind of alerts you because you remember that in a past relationship or whatever it is, he came at you like this, and hit you or did whatever he did. And so your core memory, your brain is trained to think that that also is going to happen this time. So you automatically go into fight or flight. Ooh, why'd you touch me like that? What's going on? Well, babe, I was just coming over to give you a hug, like here. But your body remembers that feeling before, and
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
what I
It's a
mean
trigger.
by really
Yeah.
truly keeping the score. And so
Right.
throughout betrayal trauma from like a spouse or someone, a partner that has betrayed you, and in that way, that's a really hard thing to work through, because this is somebody that you slept next to. This is somebody that you shared a life with. This is somebody that you had babies with or a relationship with. And so
Mm. That's so painful when you say that, though. Even
it
to this
absolutely
day,
is.
when you say that, it's still quite painful. But I want to say this real quick before I forget.
Yeah.
Guys, just go out and Google Body Keep the Score, because there are workbooks and there are cookbooks and there are movements to help you release that energy. Just go out and take a look on Amazon and you'll see a ton of stuff out there on it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
there
you're
is
right.
there is so much to be said about that because that's where the triggers are. That is what, you know, when you're with a safe partner, they're there to help you. They want to, hey, I
Yeah.
wasn't
And
meaning to
safety is
hurt
the
you.
most important thing.
Yeah.
That is the most important thing. And when your partner
Yeah,
makes you feel unsafe, that's one of the worst
it
traumas,
is.
I think, for sure. And I was just dealing with that recently because, my ex-husband would say things like, "You're lucky. I'm such a strong man because any other man would have left you by now." And
Hmm.
he would say things like, "I wish we lived in a different country so I could beat you." Or, um, okay, he just said horrible things to me. And then, at the time I didn't think that much of it, but then I realized how much that really contributed to the CPTSD because I
Yes.
didn't feel safe. My husband is standing there threatening to beat me if we lived in a different country or telling me that I'm so pathetic that I
Yeah.
need to be lucky that he stayed with me and any other man would have left me by now.
Hmm.
And that, what does that do to your safety? That's your partner talking to you like you're unworthy.
Hmm.
Well, what does that do? It comes back on the body and it says there's something wrong with me. And I still feel it in my body. In my mind, I know that was not something he should have said to me. And in my mind, I know that was abuse. But in my heart, I still think I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And that's why you have to really work through this because your body keeps it, and
Hmm.
that anxiety and that heightened state and the high blood pressure. I mean, my blood pressure was so incredibly high. It's a wonder I didn't have a
Yeah.
heart attack.
Yeah.
And it's really important to learn these, even if you guys listening don't do EMDR, but do some somatic therapy just to try to regulate the body because it's so traumatic going through these kinds of experiences. I don't. I mean, I akin them to you're constantly on high alert every day, all day, 24/7. You're basically in a car accident and you're trying to put a tourniquet on everything bleeding all
Right.
around you. It's a
Right.
it's a traumatic experience.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things that is really difficult, especially going through something like this, is is being told to kind of stay silent about it, right? And what they're finding out in research is the fact that autoimmune disorders created
Bless you.
because of anger being stuck in your body. So here you are being told, like, hey, like this happened to you, you got to move on with your life, go on. Well, the stages of grief are, that you do move on, but you also have to go through anger. And if you don't, and I remember like a therapist telling me, Danielle, you don't like deal with anger. You just like bypass it. You just go right to sadness. And I said, anger doesn't feel good in my body. Like, I don't like to be angry. I don't like to be upset like that. And they said, but that's a very necessary step in your healing because anger is a movement emotion. If you don't feel anger, it's not going to move you where you need to go. And so I really started looking at that. But what they found is that women were suppressing their anger. So they had this betrayal trauma. They had all the, the betrayal, the gaslighting, the abuse, everything. And they were supposed to put a lid on that and just move on with their life. Well, that's horseshit, right?
Right.
And so what it is like that's how we get sick. That is autoimmune disorder breeding ground for you to be sick. And so cancers, autoimmune disorders, whatever it is, I mean, you have to be able to deal with it. And we don't find out about that until we're way past it. Like, oh, geez, I heard that just like, I don't know, in the past year about autoimmune disorders being linked to like narcissistic abuse. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. And so we're finding out all this stuff. And it's like, you got to keep spreading the word. You got to keep telling people like anger is a part of the betrayal trauma, the narcissistic
Part of
abuse
healing.
of
Yeah.
healing.
And I
Yeah.
remember being so angry, and then they use that against you. You have
Oh,
anger
yeah.
issues. You need to go to therapy. So you're supposed to sit there and be beat up on, mutilated, really, emotionally,
Mhm.
spiritually, sometimes physically, but certainly there is physical abuse and all. There's either pushing or shoving or in your face or something, screaming at you. There's some kind of aggression in all of these types of relationships, but um, it's one of those experiences that when you go through, it is so alarming in your body that I know for me that I can't watch anything with domestic violence on it anymore. If
Oh,
a man
yeah.
starts yelling at a woman, now he doesn't hit, I mean, my ex-husband, he didn't hit me. But if a man starts walking towards a woman and he's got that look on his face and he's really angry and he gets up all up in her face, and he's clenching his teeth and stuff, I can't watch it. I
Right.
cannot watch it. It triggers me. I start shaking, my heart starts palpitating. And those are the kind of things that you can't live the rest of your life doing. So,
Mhm.
as a coach, if I'm still dealing with that, I'm going to figure out a way to stop dealing with that so that I can go on with my life and not feel that because I don't ever know when a trigger is going to hit me.
Mhm.
Uh, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have been through severe PTSD where you don't know what kind of trigger might hit you.
Right.
And so we can't walk around our lives. What if we're walking into an important meeting and we see a trigger, something triggers us, and all of a sudden our hands are shaking and we're sweating and we're wobbly under our legs. And for those of us that have been through true trauma, that's a very real thing.
Yeah,
It
it
happens to
is.
us. It happens to us and we don't even know when it's going to happen.
Well, and you can't talk your way out of that, right? Like you can't be like, oh, breathe into a bag or, whatever. Like those are coping skills, but you don't know when a trigger is going to hit. And what I wanted to say also is that women often have a hard time with anger because it's been weaponized against them. How many times that you had the situation, like abusive situation happen to you, and you reacted in an angry, like, how dare you say that to me or whatever, reactive abuse, right? So, oh, you're the crazy one. You're the one who's unstable. You're
And
the
they push
one.
and push and push till you react,
Yeah,
and then you're the problem.
right. And
Yeah.
And on the anger, yeah, it is a part of healing. I remember when I
yeah.
lost our son that, oh, I was mad. There was a period where I was so angry, and
Mhm.
rightfully so for a lot of things that happened surrounding that. And then I, worked through all of that. But then too, it's like that anger then became productive.
Yeah.
So like Daniel, what happened when you finally got pissed off?
Oh, yeah.
What
I
happened?
mean, and
And
Beth had a private seat to my journey because in the very beginning stages of my situation, she was like, "You're gonna find that anger one day, girl, and when you do, like, you gotta dig deep." And I was just like, I was more hurt and sad and depressed. Like I took that route, and it wasn't until just a few years ago that I tapped into the anger part, and it was it propelled me to make some changes and to change my life up, start a nonprofit, go back to school. Like there were things that made me move forward with that.
Because the anger is still their control.
Yeah.
No, you're the sad, all of those things, and feeling defeated and feeling knocked down and all of those feelings, like that's still them having control. And
Right.
I remember telling her, you got to dig down, you got to find that inner bitch and you got to bring her out and let her go.
She was
Let
all
Yeah.
the
her
time. I mean,
go. I mean, how many
yeah.
times I tell you that? And she
Yeah.
wasn't ready. And I knew it. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. And then man, but when she did,
Hmm.
a whole new thing happened. And it's a place that you get in your healing where then that anger then becomes your launching pad. And it's not that you go out and you take your anger out on people. That's not what I'm meaning. But you let that anger, then finally you're mad enough to say, you know what, you're not going to hurt me anymore.
Hmm.
You're not going to control how I feel. You
Right.
aren't going to control how my day goes because of what you did to me. That is not my fault. That is you. And I'm done with it.
Hmm.
And when you
Yeah.
get to then I got to that place. I got to that place now that I'm not afraid anymore. Put him back in front of me. It'll be a new day. And I'm not afraid anymore. And once you get to that point,
Yeah.
I mean, it is freeing. It is. And it takes a little bit to get there. But once you do, and it's you feel a
See,
lot.
I find for some people it's definitely like that. It's a destination, but for many people, and including myself, I've gone through anger stages and I've gone through profound grief.
Yeah.
And then back to anger and then back to grief and then back to anger and back to grief. I haven't found that I get to a certain place and I stay there. I
No,
get
you
to a
don't.
certain place and often go, please, God, let me stay here. This feels pretty good. I
Hmm.
can breathe and just let me stay here. And damn if I'm not off on another anxiety attack,
Yes.
whatever. Right. And
Right.
so it's very much like a roller coaster, and it's very difficult once you've been traumatized through these types of things to regulate your emotional system. And I think that's why so many people go on after these situations to make poor decisions in their lives, and often give the narcissist more ammunition because we're trying to make very heightened decisions. I know a lot of my beautiful women clients and men clients, you're trying to figure out, schools and educations for your children and retirement, and you're dividing assets and you're dealing with abuse, and it's very difficult to make decisions under these types of circumstances. So every time, of course, you step on a landmine, that's more ammunition against you.
Right.
So I would say, I don't know that we get to a destination and we stay there. I hope so. Some people do. But I would say the best thing to do is, if you're in a good place, be glad that you're in that place for the moment. But more than likely, that's not going to be your normal state,
No, it doesn't always
because
last
there's so
forever.
much of
It
the
doesn't. I mean, and
CPTSD going on.
Danielle and I both can probably attest to that, yeah, I talk a big game a lot of times, but then there are those moments when, you are down, it starts bothering you and things kind of bug you. So it's not a place that you stay all the time. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think healing is, you know, I noticed this about myself is that the dips down are not as deep, right? And I
Yeah.
don't stay there as long. So I know that I'm healing, right? So before, I would spiral, go all the way down, stay there for a long time. I couldn't function. I was in bed. Couldn't do this, couldn't do that, and just was in this deep spiral. And then coming up was done, done, very slow, very slow. Now for me, it's dip down. I'm here. What is the lesson? What do I need to remember? What am I working on? If I need to lay in bed, if I need to cry, if I need to be upset, I allow myself to do that. And then I know that the upswing, I'm coming up. I'm gonna be somewhere where I need to be. But it is a process. And like I said, I think it's unrealistic to believe that what happened to you doesn't have a lasting effect.
Mhm.
Nothing is ever going to take it all the way around. Like we're not, there's a, what is it? The Beautiful Mind, or not The Beautiful Mind, but there was a movie with Jim Carrey that was like, take out all the memories
Yeah.
and replace them with happy memories and I'm good, but it's not like that. You have this betrayal. And while I would have loved to have read about it in a book and had empathy for that situation, I got to learn how it was firsthand. And it shaped me who I am today. And what I can do moving forward is continue to be a good advocate for myself, knowing what my boundaries are, knowing what I can take, what I can't take when I've had enough, who are safe people in my life, who I can turn to, and allow myself the common courtesy to grieve when I, see other people with perfect little families, and I know that my situation is not like that. I mean, I have a lot of stuff surrounding that I still feel very triggered about. And this week, I mean, I was sharing a little bit before we started how this week was a really bad week. I had my boss was talking about their child and oh yeah, I just love them. They're just doing so amazing and this great thing. And we're gonna, after work today, we're all getting together for dinner and like a piece of me was just like, oh, I can't breathe. You know what I mean? Like it sucked the wind.
I'm feeling that right now with you telling me this. Can you tell? Can you
Yeah,
tell?
yeah,
You see me pull back? Yeah, I feel it right now. Do you feel it, Beth?
yeah,
To
yeah.
breathe? Just even
And
as a
see,
trigger. And I think
Well,
it's a trigger
yeah,
that,
and so one of my very
it is
first
very,
therapists, I had really bad postpartum depression with one of my kids. The second one I gave birth to, and got into therapy with that. And she said something that has stuck with me for years. And she said, you will know what kind of day you're going to have when you wake up in the morning.
yes.
You're going to have the feeling, you're going to know if it's going to be one of those days or if it's just going to be an ordinary day and you're going to go on. And she said, those days that are when you wake up and think, oh no, it's one of those days. She said, I want you to look at that and say, oh, okay, this is the day I'm going to have today. Recognize it, give it a name, call it out. I'm going to survive this day. I'm going to do what I have to do to get through. I'm going to be easier on myself. I'm going to take breaks. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to move through this day. And then I'm going to have to do what I have to do to make sure in the evening that I'm bringing that down. I'm like regulating my nervous system and everything to bring it so I can sleep better. And she says, recognize it and call it out and give it a name and then just work through that day. And that's really stayed with me a lot. I've shared that with a lot of people. It's
Mhm.
hard to do. It's hard
you
to,
know, it is hard to do. And I woke up this morning and I came up out of the bed, full blown panic attack.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
so you already know, you're like, "Oh, this is going to be one of those days. It's going to be one of those days. And it's been a rough day, but you're right. I hadn't really thought about that. I
mhm.
mean, I had hoped the day would get better, but I'm gonna pay more attention to that. I guess you do wake up kind of knowing if you're gonna wake up and you open your eyes and you feel like you rested well and you're in a good mood and you feel
but
safe in your bed.
yeah. And if you put the
Yeah.
expectation on
Mm.
yourself that I got to feel better, I got to feel better, and then you don't, then how do you feel?
Yeah,
But if you just say, embrace the day, oh, okay, this is not the day I wanted. Yeah, it's going to be, this is one of those days and I'm going to do what I have to do for me to get through it. And with, there's a lot going on over here and there's a lot of things I've got my hands in and different things that I'm doing. It's overwhelming. And there are a lot of days, especially the last week and a half, I got to prioritize what's the most important thing in the day. Everything else is going to have to wait because I can't do it all. I can't mentally and emotionally carry it all. So I have to just put this on hold. This is what I have to do. This young lady was the priority the last week and a half. She had to be.
yeah.
And you just get through it.
I think one thing that you also, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Beth, because it is one of those things, like I will wake up and have dreams about, my children or something or situation, and right off the bat, like, oh God, like now I'm facing reality of the situation. And so you try to like get dressed and you go on into work and you're like, it feels almost like you're clouded, like this dark cloud around you. And what I noticed about those days is like that's when I really baby myself. I'm talking to a best friend. She's telling me she's having a really shit day. And guess what? I'm going to tell her what I would hope for her to have. I would say, "Hey honey, you know what? Get yourself, like a little chai latte, you know, sit in your car, do the butterfly pat, cry, journal, go home, put on a good show for yourself, and I'm really talking to myself like that's the moment I lock in, and I really talk to myself as if I would be talking to my best friend. What is it that I can do for you right now? What is it that I can, and you have to really just say, I got a lot of anxiety today, and I'm really feeling, because I do think that our brains do a magic trick on us. They don't let us feel the full impact of everything. They say today, you're strong, so you can take this big load of memories and stuff like that and process it and sit with it and don't run from it. Don't try to numb yourself out. You want to reach for a glass of wine, you want to do this, you want to go shopping, you want to go gambling, you want to do whatever. But if you can just sit in that space of uncomfortable or crying or whatever, it will pass. It
Yeah.
will pass.
So,
It will,
the lot
yeah.
of this has been a really and it's been a rough couple of weeks with
Mhm.
this little girl. Well, I call her a little girl, she's not, but she's, it because when you're working with women who are in domestic violence situations, you gotta, it kind of, sometimes it kind of brings you back. So you're pulling on your experience, you're pulling on what you're doing so that you can help her process through what she's getting through. And so this week, and I had one day, which with my husband being home from the surgeries and stuff for all the time, I haven't had like time at home by myself for a little bit. Well, I had a day by myself the other day. I had dropped her off. I had something else going on that evening. And I thought, you know what? So here's what I did. Sounds stupid. I went in and took a really hot shower, as hot as I could stand it. I did all the shower things, then got out, put my hair up in a towel, put my bathrobe on. I turned the stream the music, like the spa music on my TV. And I like the acoustic guitar spa. I turned it up really loud. I
Yeah.
have these little things I put under my little things you put underneath your eyes with the stuff that's really cold. I keep in the fridge. I put those on and I kicked back in my recliner and I just laid in my recliner. I don't know. I must have laid there an hour. I
Yeah.
fell asleep.
Good for you.
I listened and I
Good for
thought,
you.
and I'm
Yeah,
like,
you needed that.
okay, I
Good.
needed that right
That's
there.
self-care. That's pampering.
But
Yeah.
just those small, tiny little things, and talk about self care. It doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be anything huge. Just I thought, you know what? I'm home by myself. Yeah, I'm gonna take a minute, and I did, and I just it
It's
did
interesting.
help.
I'm glad. It's interesting that the two of you, Beth and Daniel, do that you take the time out to nurture your inner child. And I'm
Mhm.
glad that you do that. That's hard for a lot of us because we actually do not like our inner child. We want to punish our inner child, like the
It's
people
taken
around
me a
us.
long time to get there, though. I never.
Yeah,
I've only been doing these kind of things probably in less than the last year, just a few months.
that's
Because
wonderful.
I've never been able, I
Because,
didn't want to be by myself. Like I want to be by myself,
right.
yet then there's too much thinking, there's too much of that. So it's,
Correct.
yeah,
Right. So I want to talk about a little bit because I think that's great because most of us come out hating our inner child. I was told for me personally, the reason I had the suicide attempts and what have you is that they hated you. You felt hated by them, my family. And so you hated you. And so then you had to kill you. And it's also that I wanted to escape all the pain, but there's a lot in that, so we hate our inner child. Our self-talk, most of us are these victims. You're so stupid. You can't do anything right. I can't believe you made another wrong decision. Of course you did. Of course this is your fault. That's how we talk to ourselves on the inside. So I love the fact, Beth and Danielle, that you have pampered yourselves, but can you talk to me a little bit about how you got there and what your inner talk is now? And do you ever catch yourself with
yeah,
that
I do.
really terrible talk?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I do. Now, I will tell you that my abuse with this was 38 years ago. So I have some time under my belt. Okay, it didn't happen overnight. It took me probably 15 years. No, not 15. No, yeah, roughly, maybe. 12, 15 years to even realize that I needed to go to counseling. Because, and we're talking back from like, well, my son was born in 87, so 88, 89, that time frame. And there was a lot, we didn't talk about counseling during that time. We didn't do that. So finally, with the postpartum depression I had when I had Ryan, and I was 28 when I had him, 29-ish. Yeah. And so I, to get me from there to where I am now, one, I've had a lot of time. I've had a lot of time. I've had a lot of therapy, a lot of therapy. I've had a lot of EMDR therapy. And then I've had to do a lot of telling myself when those intrusive thoughts happen that you're so stupid and you did. No, I'm not. I'm not stupid. Just because you think I'm stupid, I'm a back talker and I got a big mouth.
Mhm.
And that's me. That's not everybody. I have been in the gutter. I have been in the places where I just wanted to give up. But I've told myself, no, you're just because that person said you're stupid. Who were they? No, I'm not stupid. I'm very smart. I mean, I've built this business. I've done lots of other things and built, we've built two nonprofit. We've done things. We're now affecting the lives of people, and not stupid. Danielle's not stupid. Just because somebody told us we were, you have to take that for me, I had to take that authority off of that person. Why does he think I'm stupid? Well, he thinks I'm stupid because he's an idiot. And it's easier for him to say I'm stupid than it is for him to embrace his inner idiot. And that's kind of how I've looked at it. That's how I've done it. Because then I turn it, I'm not stupid. I'm not dumb. Those things were not my fault. I was told they were my fault. I was told all of these things. I mean, and I think I just over time, I got to a place for me, I was just tired of feeling like that. I didn't want to live like that. And through the therapy, I was able to work through all of that thing. But when those intrusive thoughts happen, that you're questioning yourself, and there are times I still do it, but I have to stop and say, no, you're not. Stop it. Kind of like,
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that is a good reminder is that you are not your thoughts.
yeah.
You are
And I
not
am
your
not
thoughts.
my trauma.
Right, and you are not your trauma.
No.
And Shawn, you asked how we got through it. And for me personally, like I had found myself in therapy at different stages of my life. After the birth of one of my children, I had postpartum. After death of a couple friends, it really hit me hard. I was in therapy then. And then of course after my divorce and the stuff with my kids and all that kind of stuff, I found myself in such and it's not like a one and done. I mean, people always get the misconception of like, if I go to therapy for 6 months, then I'll be healed, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, it's never like, I don't ever feel like there's like an end date for me. Like I continue to work at it and I will have really good days, and I know that when I'm stressed, the bad days come out. So like if I have something really like pressing or some kind of issue going on and my inner dialogue turns to like really negative and like, oh my God, you're so stupid, blah blah blah, and I have to really like stop sign, picture a stop sign. That's what I've done. Stop. you know, I am not stupid. I am, like I'm going to college, I'm in graduate school. I've been able to do several nonprofits. I've got, like this and this and this going on. And I try to always remind myself of like, who put that in my brain? And I know who put it in my brain, right? Is it true? Is it true? Am I stupid? No. You know,
Absolutely not. Right.
and
But you know
that's
it on paper, but you feel it, it still comes back up.
right. And I
That's
constantly remind myself, is it true?
right.
Is it true? Like
And you
show me
have
all the
to
facts. Where
consciously take that thought and change it. And it's hard.
yeah,
It's
Yes.
hard. I'm getting better at it, but I struggled a lot. There were things, and even over, just like the last few years, even it's like I would have to consciously say, like, so part of what I've done in a lot of the coaching that I've done with the people the folks I've worked with that are in addiction, the street outreach, and the things I've done is I had a program that I did in our county jail for a few years, a while, and one of the things that we talked about was trauma. And I remember the day that I was in the treatment side. They have this program where you can go into the treatment side of the jail, um, and you're not in the general population. So I was able to go into those men's pod and the women's pod and have my little class thing. And I remember the day I was in there with the men, and I had probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 guys just kind of sitting around a circle. We were talking about trauma, talking about was they didn't know what it was. Some of them all of them had grown up in broken homes and abuse and addiction and all of that kind of stuff. And I looked at them, I said, guys, I said, you are not your trauma.
Yeah.
What happened to you isn't your fault.
That's huge. When you said that, that impacted me.
Yeah.
We need to be told you that impacted me. Say that again, please. Just
I
say
said,
that again for
you are
everybody
not your
listening.
trauma. You are not your trauma. What happened to you is not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
It is the fault of the person that inflicted that trauma on you. What is your responsibility is to take today and start moving forward and healing.
Mm-hmm.
And the choices you make today going forward, those are your accountability choices. Those are your responsibility going forward for your own healing. But what they did to you is not your fault.
Yeah.
And I had a guy who was in his 50s looked at me and he started crying. He said, no one has ever said that to me. No one. He said, my dad beat me. My parents were both in addiction. I watched my dad beat my mom. I was kicked and told I was stupid. I'd never amount to anything, shoved out of the house, the things that happened to me. And he said, no one has ever told me. And 6 months later, I ran into him at a gas station and I thought I recognized him. And he came up to me and he said, what you said to me that day changed everything. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, I've got a job. I'm looking at things differently. And he said, it just changed. You took that load off my shoulders because I thought it was all my fault that I did something wrong. I said, no, you didn't. No, you didn't.
There's a movie, I don't know if you've ever seen Good Will Hunting with Matt
Yes.
Damon and Robin Williams. And
Great movie.
oh my God, I sob every time I watch that. There's that part and he's going to this counselor, he's resisting, he's like, angry and whatever. And Robin comes up to him and he says, what happened to you was not your fault. And the guy's like, yeah, whatever, it wasn't your fault. And he said, whatever, yeah, whatever. It wasn't your fault. And it took him several times to hear it. And he heard it. And then he broke. And he just sobbed and he cried. And it was like, at that moment, you could feel if you were a survivor of anything, if you were a, trauma, whatever, it is so, we're wired to kind of take that on, in some way. Did I cause this to happen? Did I do this to happen? Whatever. And it just really hits you so hard. Like, it's not your fault.
No, what they did to you was criminal.
Right.
What they did to you was criminal. You were the victim.
Right.
It's not your fault.
Right.
And
it's amazing that we all feel this too at the core. We just feel that worthless. It's our fault.
Mhm.
And and then you have them that say, you drove me to this behavior. It's your fault. You made me do it. It's all because of you. And so when a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us are in that situation where we're told it's our fault too. So not only do we feel it and we're told we're stupid, but we're told how the circumstance is because we're not good enough and we're not stepping up to the plate enough, and how we aren't, smart enough or caring enough or affectionate enough or forgiving enough. There's always something wrong with us. So of course we internalize that. How can we not?
They destroy your self-worth.
Yeah. I
and
think
your
that just goes back
self-esteem.
to that, like your self-esteem, your self-worth. I mean, that is somebody who is projecting how they feel onto you, and you know, you're an empathetic, compassionate person, a mother, some nurturer, and when someone's telling you that, you're thinking, well, they love me, right? So they're telling me this, and I'm taking this on like it's mine. Well, no. No, this is a person who wants to dominate you. This is a person who wants to control you and manipulate you and gaslight you and fuck with your brain. And so that's why I'm saying, like, it's not a normal situation. You're not, and I say this, and I've really have believed this in the past like several months. I've been thinking about the way of like it not being just a disorder of somebody, right? So we are always trying to put labels on like, oh, well, they're narcissistic or they're sociopathic or, Machiavellian or the dark triad or whatever. We're always searching for labels. But I think more than anything, it's like a spiritual kind of warfare. Like people who are doing this type of behavior are not right. Like you're like there's something fundamentally wrong with you, and it goes beyond labels and stuff. Like there is something core value in you that has made you be this way, to someone else who was
I-
loving to you,
I'd like to add a little nugget in there about that little, what was it that made you that way? And I think we as women, moms, you're going to really like this one. When my
Mhm.
kids were little, my ex's mom came to stay with me, and I liked my ex's mother. I liked my mother-in-law a lot. When I had met my husband and all of that, I didn't have any problems with her. And I had my kids. I had two sets of twins, boy girl twins, and my oldest set was probably around 3. And they were doing the terrible 2, terrible 3 kind of thing, right? She was there trying to help me. She told me that I needed to break my children's spirit.
Mm.
You don't break your child's spirit.
No.
And what she had me do that day is she had me, my oldest daughter used to have tantrums, just tantrums. I mean, kids have tantrums. And she said, put her in her room and close the door. So I put her in her room, I closed the door, and came out. And she said, go put her back in her room. So I went to put her back in her room and came out. And then she said, now hold the door and don't let her come out. So I sat on the floor and I held the door and I cried and was behind the door. Oh, I said, my daughter.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'll
my
take
daughter was behind the door and she was crying and kicking and screaming, and I was holding the door and I was crying, and I thought, I'll never do that again. I will never do that again. I am not going to break my child's spirit. And after that, we did not exactly mesh well. I was always very kind to her, but I did not take her advice on how to raise my children. What she did to my ex-husband is she broke his spirit. She told me about a day he was home and she went and sat him on the bed and he kept coming off the bed. She said it took all day, but I taught him who was in control. She said he took him upstairs. He was like 2 years old. She sat him on the bed, door open. He'd come back down. She'd go back up. She said this happened all day till she broke him. And
Mm.
he put his mom on a pedestal in our marriage, like before me. He regarded her as God. And he even taught my children to treat me horrible. But he treated his own mother and he put her before me in our entire marriage. But that's a little insight as to what moms do to little boys, that they start that domination and control thing with them. And then what do? They grow up to do it to women
Yeah.
because their moms taught them. Uh, but
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
that breaking my child's spirit, that one, I will never break a spirit. Who
Yeah.
who says such
Isn't
a
that
thing?
wild to have somebody say, "Hey, I've got the rule book on how to break someone's spirit"? Like, what in the hell? Like, I'm just raising kids here. I'm just trying to do the best for my child. Like, and you're teaching me how to do like psychological warfare. Like what? And so, I mean, there is something not from this earth. I feel that these types of people are like, I really feel like there's something wrong with them fundamentally to the core, something that childhood shaped them. They were born like that. They had a missing frontal lobe. Something is wrong that cannot be fixed. And that's how they move through the world. They don't know any other way but manipulating, triangulating, gaslighting, any kind of way to get their needs met in this world. And so, like I've just kind of like chalked it up to like somebody had given me this piece of advice in the beginning, like stop asking why. Stop
That's so
asking
hard.
why.
That's so hard, but you're right, because
Oh,
that's what that
Well,
loops you, because there is no answer. It's
that's
so
the
yeah, and
hard.
there,
rumination,
so
right?
this,
That's the rumination of like a constantly, well, why did this happen? Why did I do something? Why this? Because normal people don't try to get the mother of their child out of their child's life or their father out of the father. You know, like their divorces happen every day of the week. They happen all the time. People sometimes find that they, you know, that we don't match up or whatever. But to deliberately bring your child and manipulate the child's brain into doing the way that they act towards you is just, there's no words that can describe that. And I hold anyone around that circle um culpable. Like you're a part of this dysfunction if you don't speak up and say that it's wrong. And anyone who knows me knows that I was a good mother. I can take that to God, I can take it to anywhere. I know that who I was as a mother. You know, for so long, I think this, you know, I'm going to go on a tangent for just a second, but for so long during this whole thing, you doubt yourself, you question, God, was I too hard on him? Wasn't I there enough? Did I do something wrong? I had three children. I was juggling this, I was juggling that. You know, you're messing with your mind in ways. Normal, healthy people want to figure out what it was. What did I do wrong? But the thing that I can honestly say 6 years out and lots of therapy is that I was a great mom. I loved my children. I did everything I could for them. And it is such a shame that this has happened to them, you know? And so I find anybody that, you know, that has anything to do with this or siding up or pitting this person against whatever, I find them just as guilty. And
Of
I really do.
course.
I think, you know, you're part of the problem. You're a sick individual too, and I want nothing to do with you. You know, so that's my anger for today.
A good
I,
anger. That's a good anger.
I mean, it's true. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, everybody, I think there's this, people want to go on this fast track of forgiveness, right? You have to forgive. You have to forgive people to move on, right? My thought process is no, I just move on.
Yeah.
I leave that one, and this is my own take on it. I know everybody has their own opinion about forgiveness and stuff. I'll let God deal with whatever he needs to deal with. But for
Yeah.
me, I moved on. I moved
Yeah.
on when I knew that like this person was not a good person. And so, you know,
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, it came up, actually came up yesterday with this young lady I'm working with, but in a conversation a while back, you know, the different things that I've dealt with in the trafficking and all of that. And there was a certain situation, and someone said, you know, I can't understand that. I don't understand how somebody could treat another person like that. And someone else in the conversation said, and it's okay that you don't understand that,
right.
because if you could understand it, you'd be like them.
Yeah.
And that
Right.
hit me, and I thought, oh,
It's,
and I don't
that's
want to
so true.
understand it. I don't
That's
want
so
to
true.
know why how they acted and why they acted that way. And, you know, it's coming from just a really, really horrible place. And I don't want to know. That just, I don't know. That was something that just kind
Well,
of,
Yeah,
and
I've heard
then
that too.
yeah. And then, you know, and somebody who lives 10 steps ahead of someone else, who watches you walk into the pitfalls, who watches you know that, if I do this, this is going to happen, or I can get the power over here and I can do this and I can manipulate this person to
yeah.
believe
I
that
mean, all I
you
know
know,
is that it made me a fighter. I mean, it
oh,
made me, this whole experience, all of that stuff and everything and different little things here and there. Even losing our son turned out that it made me a fighter.
yeah.
Sometimes that's not good, but I mean, as far as, you know, not physical fighting, but I mean, you know, I mean, like it just did something to me, that all of this coming up to this point is like, now I don't care who I make mad. I
Yeah.
don't care. I'm going to speak my truth. I'm going to say what I have to say.
They, it's interesting, isn't it funny? Because I hear a lot of people say that, and I felt that way at first too.
Mhm.
And you know what I will say, this experience the most recent thing, I went through a very difficult time where I really turned on my faith. I will be very honest with you. I was very angry with God. I'm sure it was blasphemy. I was reading in the Bible one night. God just kind of started turning. I think my mom passed, and I think my mom started knocking. I took her old Bible. She used to keep her Bible on her bed and read her Bible every night. And I took her Bible, and you know what I did? Put it on my bed.
Mm,
I started reading the Bible. And in the Bible, it says, if you do not, and we have all this guilt from things. I wasn't perfect. I was far from perfect.
right.
But I will say this, if I'd married someone else, okay, I'm gonna take responsibility for my own actions, but that wouldn't happen. So I'm just gonna put that little nugget in there. But you know, he said, if you do not forgive, you will not be forgiven. And I read that. And at that moment, for me, I said, you know what? It doesn't hurt me to forgive my ex-husband, and it doesn't hurt me to forgive my children for the things that they did. And I know that they came out of what the situation just like I did. I don't think they intentionally meant to hurt their mom. And so I did. And it wasn't instantaneous, but I will tell you, a lot of my anger got so much better. And anger can hold you back. It's a good thing too, but it absolutely can hold you back. But like, unlike you, Beth, I was in that place where you were too, where things had made me so much harder, harder, harder. And then I can't speak for everyone, but I think, Beth, you might hit where you start coming out on the other side of that anger. And when you start coming out on the other side of that anger, you start finding more peace.
Mm.
And you want to start finding more understanding, and you're more careful about who you cut off too quickly. You start becoming more in control of your emotions, and you start saying, wait a minute, I really want to feel this. And I want to understand completely where I'm at and what my decision choices are. So am I going to treat this person in such a way that is human and kind? Or am I going to treat this person in such a way that I really don't have time for them because I'm too busy? And in the past, I would have probably paid attention to that person, but now I've learned that people have hurt me, so I'm going to cut them off. So we've got two choices when we come out, and I've been both. I have been both coming out of this. I've been that person and I felt really bad, but I want to be this person who is more empathetic and caring and understanding and comes out of this for people. I want to listen more to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to connect more to people. People do scare me, but I want to be the right one. I was chatting with someone the other day, and I was about my attachment style. I attach hard, and that's not a bad thing. I attach hard. We're supposed to attach. I still am attached, and I'm still working on unattaching. That's normal. What we have to do is work on finding people who have our own attachment style. I attach deeply to someone who does not attach. Narcissists do not attach, and most empaths attach deeply. So you have someone that attaches more than the average person to someone who does not attach at all. And so when that person walks away and leaves you like you're nothing, that's devastating to this personality type. So we have two choices. We become really hard and we're not going to do this anymore. And we need to get a little harder for sure. We need to have a little more of a backbone, but we don't want to give up our humanity either. And that's really hard in these situations. And we have to find that balance.
Yeah.
And I
I
find
think,
that's where I'm at now, is I'm trying to find the balance.
right. I think healing happens for people so differently, and it looks so different for everyone. And what works for one person and they find solace in this way, other people find it in this way, other people find it in this way. And for a long time, and I just want to circle back around about the forgiveness part, because I think that it's in our nature, right? I was raised Christian, and everything that I've always been told, is about forgiveness, right? You forgive the people that did this. And I really did a deep dive on that, because that was always kind of like, okay, like forgiveness is something that, you have to do for yourself, and you have to, and I forgive people who have done me wrong in the past, and I've given forgiveness. What I won't forgive is malicious intent. And for me, someone who is purposely, intentionally doing something, I'm not there yet to forgive. And I will say, for me, I leave it to the higher power. That's not my business to take care of. I move on. I just move on. And that's how I've been able to deal with that. And I think so many survivors feel like I've got to hurry up and forgive in order to heal. And that's not true. I don't think that you have
Well,
to.
I agree with that. I don't think so, because I had no intention of forgiving. I was
Yeah,
exactly like you.
I don't
You
think that
know,
you
that's
have
up to
to heal.
God. I don't need to forgive him. I'm not, and so
Yeah.
that was a moment that was brought to me by my God, my Christ, my
Mhm.
Lord, my Savior. He said in that moment as I was reading the Bible, you need to do this for you. And so I wanted to share that with everyone. And
Yeah,
I do believe, obviously, that it is a personal journey.
it
And
is.
I did not believe that I had to forgive in order to move on. I did not believe that I had to forgive because I didn't want to. But when I read the passage that said, if you forgive, you will be forgiven, all I
Mhm.
cared about in that moment was being forgiven.
Yeah.
I didn't care in that moment about holding him anymore to accountability because, God's going to do that.
Hmm. Right.
Justice is the Lord's, vengeance is the Lord's. But in that moment, I was thinking about Shawn. I was
Yeah.
thinking about Shawn and I want to be forgiven. And I was feeling so guilty and so shameful, how you come out of these relationships. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to take the forgiveness and
Mm.
I will say, I'm not telling anyone to do it and you have to feel it.
Right.
But when I did it, I did feel a shift. There was a shift in me.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't explain it, but I did want to share that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, it's not like I intended to forgive. I didn't say I'm going to forgive today. I was just reading a Bible passage in it, and it happened, and I did it, and I did feel a difference. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying today anyone out there who's holding on to that anger. I know that Dr. Romney says she will never forgive. And
Yeah.
I was totally on board. I was like, me either, go Dr. Romney. I didn't expect that moment. So I'm not saying, Danielle, that you should or anyone else
Yeah.
should.
No.
But I'm saying if you're ever pricked and in that moment, whatever. But it happened to me and it did change. But
Yeah.
again, you have to be ready for it. Like you said, it's not something that you can say, well, I'm going to just go forgive them and that's going to push my healing. It doesn't really work like that.
Right.
No,
You
but
have to
that's
be, you have
important
to
what you
be in
just
that
said, Sean.
place.
Yeah, it's like you can't just throw out there and say, well, I forgive them or I forgive that, because it's a process. It's
Yeah.
a process. And when you truly get to that place where you feel that peace in your heart, that you are going to offer that forgiveness, then yeah, then that's the point that things start to shift. But yeah, it's a journey for sure. I mean, it's not something, because I don't think that it's as effective if you just throw it out there and say, I want to be forgiven, so I forgive you. Okay, what's the end? It's like when your kids are little and you say, tell them you're sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You didn't mean it.
Right.
Tell them again.
This
It's
is
kind of
so that
like,
I'm
yeah, it's kind
sorry
of
kind
like
of thing.
that.
Yeah.
So it's like,
This is
but in
much
your
deeper
most
than that.
vulnerable moments, just even
Yeah.
taking that to God. I mean, that's where the healing comes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love Dr. Romney. She is she's
she's
spot on for
wonderful.
anyone who's
Yeah,
been like through it. I mean, all of her videos are so insightful, and I'm with her on the whole forgiveness thing. Like, I just malicious intent. If you have malicious intent in your bones in your body, like, stay the hell away from me. I'm like, no way. Get away. But yeah, we've been talking here for a long time. I'm just like looking at the clock, and I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that, we all have we all could go on and on about our journey and where we are. And I think I always love to have these podcasts because it's kind of like, talking about the hard stuff, the hard journey, because a lot of times people want to, hurry up the, healing and wrap it up in a bow and say, hey, you know what? I'm healed and I'm good and I'm going on. But healing, I think, is a process, and it takes as long as it takes.
Mhm.
And I'm always reminded when we do these of just how incredible, like, our, Shawn, you are, and Beth, for your sharing your journey and things like that, because during all of this we always feel like we're just islands out there, we're just floating, we're just, I'm so betrayed, I'm so hurt, I'm dealing with this or whatever. But it's like when we connect with others and say, hey, you know what, I've been there too. I know where you're at. I know, you're kind of hurt, and I'm so sorry that you've been through that. And I'm here to, listen, hold space for someone. And it's just, I always love doing our podcast because it just reminds me that, like, I'm not alone in my healing. And of course, connecting to community and
Been a
things
lot
like
of
that.
heavy stuff today, but this has been good. This is
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we're
It was
at our
good.
time, and I know we'll probably have you back on more.
yeah. Anytime,
That
Shawn.
sounds good.
So
All right.
this is From
Thank
the
you.
Roots. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. And we're gonna just pull that that you are not your trauma. And that's how we're gonna end today. You are not your trauma. It's
Not
not
your
your
fault.
fault. And you just are not your trauma. They did this to you. So we're gonna end that today. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.